The Second Epistle to the Corinthians, Chapter 10, Lesson 11. In studying this chapter, 1. To understand the nature of the war in which we are engaged, and to appreciate the weapons we have that are mighty in God, and 2. To see the folly of judging others by outward appearances, and in comparing ourselves with others. Having concluded his discussion on the collection for the saints, Paul now returns to his own defense, especially as it pertains to his conduct and authority as an apostle of Jesus Christ. He pleads with them in the meekness and gentleness of Christ, hoping that by doing so it will not be necessary to use boldness in their presence against some who think Paul conducts himself according to the flesh. 2 Corinthians 10, 1-2. Now I, Paul, myself, entreat you by the humility and gentleness of Christ, I who in your presence am lowly among you, but being absent am good of courage toward you. Yes, I beg you that I may not, when present, show courage with the confidence with which I intend to be bold against some who consider us to be walking according to the flesh. While he admits that he walks in the flesh, he does not war according to the flesh, since he has weapons that are mighty in God and effective for winning arguments and bringing others to obey Christ. 2 Corinthians 10, 3-6. For though we walk in the flesh, we don't wage war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but mighty before God to the throwing down of strongholds, throwing down imaginations, and every high thing that is exalted against the knowledge of God, and bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ, and being in readiness to avenge all disobedience, when your obedience will be made full. He then responds directly in regards to his detractors. Some were evidently judging Paul on outward appearance, that while he sounded weighty and powerful in his writing, his physical presence was weak and contemptible. But Paul's authority as an apostle of Jesus Christ was real, and what he was in word when absent, he could be in deed when present. 2 Corinthians 10, 7-8. Do you look at things only as they appear in front of your face? If anyone trusts in himself that he is Christ, let him consider this again with himself, that even as he is Christ, so also are we Christ. For though I should boast somewhat abundantly concerning our authority, which the Lord gave for building you up, and not for casting you down, I will not be disappointed. 2 Corinthians 10, 9-11. That I may not seem as if I desire to terrify you by my letters. For his letters, they say, are weighty and strong, but his bodily presence is weak, and his speech is despised. Let such a person consider this, that what we are in word by letters when we are absent, such we are also in deed when we are present. We can also infer that some of Paul's detractors took pride in comparing themselves with others. Such a practice was unwise, and Paul was one who would boast only in those areas in which God had appointed him to serve. That would include the Corinthians themselves, for Paul would only go to areas where the gospel had not been preached, and that is how they had come to believe. Reminding them of this, Paul had hoped that they would assist him in preaching the gospel in regions beyond them. He then admonishes them to boast only in the Lord, and to remember that not he who commends himself is approved, but whom the Lord commends. 2 Corinthians 10, 12-14. For we are not bold to number or compare ourselves with some of those who commend themselves, but they themselves, measuring themselves by themselves, and comparing themselves with themselves, are without understanding. But we will not boast beyond proper limits, but within the boundaries with which God appointed to us, which reach even to you. For we don't stretch ourselves too much, as though we didn't reach to you, for we came even as far as to you with the gospel of Christ. 2 Corinthians 10, 15-18. Not boasting beyond proper limits in other men's labors, but having hope that as your faith grows, we will be abundantly enlarged by you in our sphere of influence, so as to preach the gospel even to the parts beyond you, not to boast in what someone else has already done, but he who boasts, let him boast in the Lord. For it isn't he who commends himself who is approved, but whom the Lord commends. The Second Epistle to the Corinthians, Chapter 10, Lesson 11, the end.